Amy Haugland.
And I'm Alex Haugland.
And this is our 1952 Jaguar XK120 open two-seater.
Welcome to Every Day to Exotic.
Shadows are following me. I don't need sunglasses. Ain't no sun without you, baby.
There's over 200 cars in the Haugland Collection.
And it just keeps growing.
Our goal is to try and drive them all. In this episode of Every Day to Exotic,
Alex impersonates a seal.
they're clapping together. Amy restrains herself for the sake of the children.
I was going to say a swear word, and we're not allowed to say swear words. And then we explore the most beautiful scenery the Oregon coast has to offer.
All this and more on today's episode of Every Day to Exotic.
But first, let's take a look into the XK120's history. The origins of the car company Jaguar date back to 1922 with the founding of the Swallow Sidecar Company, jointly founded by William Lyons and William Walmsley in Blackpool, England. The company began building sidecars for motorcycles and then later custom bodies for various car chassis, primarily for the Austin 7, but also for Standard, Swift, and Fiat automobiles, mimicking the lines of more luxurious automobile designs at the time.
William Lyons actively took a role in designing the cars, and in 1932 the company was reformed as SS Cars Limited under his leadership, with William Walmsley opting to sell out his shares. The new firm hired William Haynes and Harry Westlake as engineers and focused the company by building cars with sporting, sleek lines based on the Standard drivetrain. These cars were further improved by fitting a new overhead valve cylinder head developed by Harry Westlake, and in 1935, SS Cars Limited launched the SS Jaguar range of cars, marking the first use of the name Jaguar for the company initially as a model name rather than the brand itself.
World War II halted production, and following the war, the company adopted the name Jaguar, abandoning the pre-war Germanic SS logo and negative connotations the war had created for those letters, in favor of what would be the mascot and logo that remains to present day.
Initial car production picked up from where it was left off in 1940, with body changes to the cars, but the biggest change was the introduction of Jaguar's new 3.4-liter XK engine. The design of the engine began during World War II, with the story being that William Lyons and his engineers, including William Haynes and Harry Westlake, discussed plans for the engine while on fire watch on the roof of the SS Cars factory during bombing raids. The new engine was a significant improvement over the previous options and marked a significant leap forward for the company.
To showcase the new engine design, the decision was made to install it in a new streamlined sports car body, calling the car the XK120, combining the code for the engine with 120, which was the theoretical top speed expected for the car. This car was developed in record time, being designed in 3 months, and premiering at the 1948 Earl's Court Motor Show, despite not truly being ready for public release. The car drew massive interest, convincing William Lyons to put what otherwise may have been a one-off design into production.
The original plan was for the car to be produced in small numbers, and the first 242 cars were made with hand-formed aluminum bodies over an ash frame, with the chassis design largely shared with the contemporary Jaguar Mark V saloon. As orders kept pouring in, the decision was made to switch most of the body to steel panels that could be stamped more efficiently to speed up production and meet demand.
To further boost the public's attention, a largely stock car with the windscreen removed and an available alternate final drive ratio was driven on the Austin-Jebeki motorway in Belgium, with officially timed top speed of 132.6 miles per hour, making it what was then the fastest production car in the world.
The range of cars consisted of 3 body styles, with the open two-seater, a drop-head coupe, and an enclosed coupe, all of them proving to work as both an elegant sports car for the road and as a fast race car on the track. Production ended after 12,055 cars were made across 3 different body styles before the XK120 was replaced by the similar-looking XK140 in 1954, with significant modifications both to the cosmetic trim of the car as well as the underlying design.
Our example is a 1952 XK120 open two-seater, which was restored for the previous owner and set up with the intention of being able to tour in the car. It is largely restored as originally built, except for modifications to the cooling system, in order to make it more capable of handling higher temperatures and stop-and-go traffic.
So it really surprises me, to be honest, that We're halfway through the third season of this channel, and we are finally doing a Jaguar. The reason that that's really surprising is this collection started exclusively with Jaguar. And this is actually one of those cars that we got relatively early in that sequence of Jaguars. This was one of our first particularly interesting early cars that is a running, driving, restored car. This car also has another special meaning aside just from being a Jaguar. When I was about 8 years old, it was quite frequent for my family to go travel to Italy and visit family on my mother's side that lived there. There's a company there called Burago that made these beautiful model kits of classic European cars. One of the things I got as a kid was a model kit of a Jaguar XK120 open two-seater, and it happens to be in exactly this same color scheme. As a result, when I saw this car coming up for sale, I knew that this was absolutely something I wanted to have, because the entire idea of having something that was a small model that I enjoyed putting together as a kit, and then finally getting the one-to-one scale real one that I could drive around, that absolutely won me over. And I am so glad I ended up with this car.
Absolute childhood dream come true.
So the shape of this car was really designed by William Lance, and it is a good indicator of exactly how talented he was as a designer, especially frankly with not being Italian. As the vast majority of like the really pretty cars in our collection are of Italian origin, this is one of the most beautiful British cars ever made, in my opinion.
And I should say especially of this era.
Absolutely.
Because British cars got prettier, but at this time, they were not known for the swooping lines and the elegance and going quickly.
And so this really was a major step forward in British car design. You have really flowing lines all the way across the front end. You've got shapes that sort of echo each other. The arch over the fender is matched by the arch in the center of the hood, kind of flows through the entire car. You have these lines where it swoops up and then swoops down, and then above the rear wheel swoops up again. It's just, it flows beautifully. It's ballet in art. Such an elegant, elegant shape. It's just a masterful piece of design.
It looks like something that is moving even when it's sitting still. And it looks like something that's meant to move with the wind and the environment around it, as opposed to pushing through it. And that's something I really appreciate about this design.
It has a lot of simplicity to it, but it has a lot of elegance in that simplicity. You do have a fair number of chrome bits here and there. I mean, this is normally Amy's end of things to talk about. I mean, you have the bumpers that are fairly minimalist. It's as little bumper as you could get away with. That was actually one of the big complaints Americans had about the XK120, is the bumpers didn't really do anything when people would hit you with big American cars. So unfortunately, when they came out with the XK140, one of the first things they did was put on a big, massive bumper, mostly because they're trying to sell it to the Americans.
Not as decorative.
Not as decorative, not as nice. The important thing to remember about this car is it was designed in 3 months in order to make it to the 1948 Earl's Court Motor Show. This is a design of a car where there were a lot of things that they did to kind of shape it and make it beautiful and all of that, but there's also a lot of compromises in it. You don't really see most of them in the outlying shape, but you start discovering them as you actually get into the car.
So something else to take into account about the design of this car is it was created as a setting for the jewel that is the XK engine. This was a new, fabulous thing that Jaguar really wanted to showcase. And they wanted to showcase that it could be in a car that you would feel very elegant and lovely driving, as opposed to a race car, which they also built. And so it was like, look, we'll take something incredibly powerful and gorgeous and put it in something that you could technically drive every day.
The entire thought process behind this car shifted in the direction of mass production after they saw the massive response that it got at the Earl's Court Motor Show. One of the things that really kind of showcases the care that Jaguar took in making these bodies, the front end of this is made out of multiple pieces of metal. But if you were to look at it now, you will see that there are no seams around this entire hood opening. It is a continuous piece of metal at this point for the front end of these cars. And one of the ways to tell a very good Jaguar XK120 from one that has probably had some damage or had some issues is how well the bonnet, the hood here, fits the car. It should have a consistent, nice gap all the way around. This one's actually a really nice example of that, where it fits very, very well all the way around the car. There are little rubber bumpers that it sits up on, so there should always be a gap, but Frequently, if you've had a front end collision or things have been repaired poorly, the hood may be slightly bent, that gap may change in width in various points, may not quite line up. These were hand fitted when they were made, and as a result, if you're to repair it, you almost have to redo all of that work hand fitting it and making it perfect.
You see some of these beautiful little details that they put on partially because this is a show car.
Yes.
Originally. One of the things that I love the most while we're up front is just this little piece that comes up over the rings on the headlights and then down the center of the pod on both sides that is also echoed by this side light. They didn't have to put that on there, but they took the time, even though they only had 3 months, to just make that pretty.
So we do have one extra feature on the front here. The fog lights weren't necessarily standard. You could put them on, but they were something that was an optional extra that you would install. It wasn't necessarily something that came by default on the car. They fit in with the really large 7.7-inch flat glass headlights that were the standard issue on these cars outside the United States. Inside the United States, you got a stupid little 7-inch sealed beam. These are so much more elegant, they so much more fit the car. And so in the restoration, of course, you go back to the European style headlight now that we can legally do so.
Some of those safety standards are why we couldn't have nice things.
So Jaguar is best known symbolically for sort of the leaping Jaguar on the hood of the car sticking out. On these cars, that looks really out of place because it is such a streamlined car. It does seem sort of odd to have this thing suddenly like lancing out of the hood. Instead, what Jaguar opted for is their other logo, which is commonly referred to as the Growler, and it is just the face of the cat growling on a badge. Moving towards the back of the car, we'll bypass the mirrors for the moment, but we will get to those later. And you get to the windscreen frame here. It itself is its own beautiful piece of art. So you have these beautiful flowing shapes for how it fits the body with the beautifully shaped supports on the side and at the base of the center. The glass itself is actually flat. It's safety glass. It's pretty much what you would typically want on a windscreen. If you're racing this car, all this would probably go away, and you put on either a little Brooklyn screen or run with as minimal of a windscreen as possible just to reduce the airflow. So one other thing you may notice is the way the wipers are parked on the windscreen. And so these are what the Brits call a clap hands wiper setup. So basically the two wipers come together at the center and back down, as if they're clapping together. They don't necessarily meet, but that is the thought process. So, as we kind of come around the profile of the car, you can really see that sweeping shape that basically follows the hood line up and around down the rear fender. And you really kind of see the almost airplane-like characteristics of this car. One of the things that particularly stands out on that front is the trim around the cockpit. This is pretty reminiscent of circa World War I aircraft, kind of coming up through the 30s, where you would have essentially a padded leather trim around the edge of a cockpit. And that's what this is. This is actually a rubber trim covered with leather and fitted to the body. And it just finishes off the cockpit of this like if it were an airplane.
One of the things that I think is really cool is that the wheels are color matched to the body. And so it just looks coordinated. And then you have the lovely chrome accents and Jaguar on your hubcap, just in case you forgot what you were driving. Also down here, we have this interesting little cutout. This is a fresh air vent that allows air to come into the cockpit and airflow to happen. It's operated in the footwell, and I will demonstrate that later.
Something else you'll notice is a complete and utter lack of a door handle. In order to open this car up, you have to be able to get inside of it. And you reach inside and you pull a leather release cord, and that allows you to open the door, which actually opens a fair amount, making it a fairly easy car to get in and out of.
Which is good, because that is a large steering wheel, and sometimes getting your legs underneath it can be a little bit awkward.
So as we continue to the back, we get a little bit of welting between the rear fender and the body. You'll see that our rear wheel is almost completely covered. This is what would be typically called a spat, and it was a pretty nice design feature, primarily for aerodynamics and cosmetics. To some extent, it makes it a pain to change the tire, but not too bad, because you have a tool that comes in here, goes in this hole underneath this little cover, and allows you to unlock this. You can then tilt it down and unhook it, and then get full access to the wheel, just like in the front. Other things fitted into the streamlined nature of the body is this, which is our fuel flap. And you need the key, or a key, to get into it. And it's a little bit unusual in that it has a lid that is spring-loaded, built into the cap itself. And as you basically open it up, it leaves the fuel filler completely open and exposed on the inside. It has a little rubber seal that when you push it down, it seals against that and theoretically keeps it from coming out.
So here we are back at the mirrors. You might wonder why they're this far forward. The reason is because, well, A, it's fairly easy to mount them up here, but also this angle means that you don't have your blind spot like over here. Your blind spot is right where your peripheral vision would be anyway. And since this is an open top car, you can definitely see. But this lets you see everywhere around you and behind you. So they're great. The one disadvantage is that you can't adjust them from the driver's seat. So you have to have an assistant.
It's a two-person activity.
It is.
This is an open car. We do have a fair number of little fittings. These on either side, and then like these little studs sticking out, are all there to basically allow you to have some kind of weather protection. There is a soft top in this car. It tucks away completely behind the seats. We'll get to that when we start talking about the interior a little bit more. And when it's up, it needs to clip into these at the back in order to attach to the body. The downside of that, unfortunately, is you then have a tendency for it to rub against the paint. And so we have some scratches in the center of the rear of this car that came from that soft top. Admittedly, initially, before I even owned the car.
So here at the rear, again, it's a very clean backside. We have these absolutely gorgeous little pods that hold your tail light. I love how it's got that little black seal that echoes the black welting. So it just all looks very coordinated. That's, as you know, very important to me. Also back here we have our bumpers. They're basically single overriders, kind of springy. You'll notice if you hit something, but they're kind of decorative.
They're minimalist. It's one of those things where they technically do something, but at the same time, it's as little as possible in order to be able to do that something.
But they're also decorative. They're very pretty.
So the other thing you'll see is that we've got a metal plinth here that the license plate is mounted to. That was sort of an add-on to the body in order to basically give you a flat surface to mount a plate. And it's wide enough for a European plate, also fits an American plate reasonably well. Above it, we have our license plate light, which basically sits here, has two lights coming from underneath, and then it actually has a reverse light built into it as well. And the trunk, you will see, we've got the trim and it flows all the way down to the very bottom of the body of the car. If we were to open it, we turn this handle, lift up, and then we have a prop rod that props it and holds it up for us. The inside of the trunk is lined. It does have a spare tire in here. That's part of why it drops as low as it does on this car. Your trunk is not very tall. It's not good for wine. It'll do like a couple small suitcases, like the airline rollerboard type suitcases, things like that, a few bags, a few things here or there. But otherwise, it's a good weekend car. It's not really a great car to go on like 2 or 3 week trips. There just isn't enough room to carry the stuff. And there's nowhere in the cockpit to really put any of it either. So you do have a full-size spare, you have a jack that's mounted down here, you've got your jack handle here, you've got a tire pump that comes with the car in order to basically allow you to inflate your flat tire and things like that. If you look at the construction of the trunk, the framing of the trunk in here is all wood. This originally, when they first designed the 120, was a wooden ash-framed car with an aluminum body over it. They replaced a lot of that with steel as they went into later production, just as they made it easier to build. But there's still a fair amount of wood hidden here and there inside these cars. And this is one of the places that you tend to see it. With that, we can probably close up the trunk and move on to the mechanicals. So moving on to the mechanicals, this is really why this car exists. I mean, Jaguar built this as a test bed and a showcase for their new engine design, not really to necessarily mass produce the car. So because it's really the beating heart of it, we're going to start under the hood. So Amy, if you will. Thank you.
Could only make you mine.
There have been two significant modifications to this car, both of which are under the hood, and both of which are related to one of the main problems with the Jaguar XK120. You'll see that this is a more modern aluminum radiator, and there's an aluminum expansion tank. Those are basically because these cars have a very hard time staying cool. Other than that, you will see what is probably one of the more beautiful engines ever made. Cosmetically, Jaguar felt that it was not just important to have the body of the car be beautiful, but there should be no reason why the engine underneath the hood couldn't be beautiful too. And they really kind of went out of their way to design what is a very nice looking engine, not just a great performing one. This engine is a straight six, 3.4 liter, a twin cam motor. So you basically have a hemispherical combustion chamber with two overhead camshafts driven by a timing chain inside the front cover. And so you have your valve covers here over each of the two camshafts. Carburation is done via two SU 1 3/4 inch carburetors, pulling in from air filters that are just bolted straight onto the face of the carburetor. Again, air filters in this time period, they do a good job keeping out small insects and things like that. Probably not great at the finest of dust, but they work for the most part. We have what is quite literally on this car, the original ignition coil, still running it from 1952. It is dated on the back of the coil. It still works great. No real reason to replace it, and it is period correct and correct for the car. On this side of the engine, as we look in, you'll see the exhaust manifolds have been covered in black porcelain. That's to improve the flow of heat through them and sort of heat dissipation in the engine bay itself. That was a standard thing on XK motors pretty much up until late into the production. You'll typically see on a lot of these cars, over time that has a tendency to get splashed with water when they're hot and crack and fall off. A lot of cars over time end up losing that. These have been reporcelainized, they look pretty good and have held up so far pretty well. But then this car does not see a lot of driving in the rain. Your steering column comes through the firewall and runs right down alongside this engine. Our brake master cylinder is kind of tucked underneath the car, and we have a reservoir mounted on this side to feed it. And our voltage regulator and fuses, the very few fuses that are on this car, are all right over here on this side. One of the things I had to do on this car, because there's not a lot of room in the footwell, is modify the pedals in order to basically be able to get my foot on top of the brake and on top of the clutch and be able to push them to the floor without necessarily having my legs dug into the steering wheel or the door or something along that line. And if you look down here, this here is our brake pedal, and you can see there are a number of different notches on this, and we've added notches basically allowing us to set that so that we can still fully engage the brake when it's depressed, but have the pedal sit at a lower level to start with, making it much easier for me to drive. Tucked down here we have our distributor, and then back here is our wiper motor that drives typical Lucas style as a cable, essentially running up to the wipers that it uses to operate the wipers themselves. The only other things that you'll really notice in here that are sort of unique or interesting, I think, are the starter solenoid down here, which has a push button on it. And the push button allows you to theoretically operate the starter from in the engine bay itself. And then up here, this chrome knob is a heater valve. So if you want to have heat in the car, you can have it open. But if you're driving in the summer and you want to make sure you just get no heat coming through the heater, you can close it off. This car has what is effectively an electric choke mechanism that is run off of a thermostatic switch. That thermostatic switch is mounted right here into the intake passage, essentially coming off of the radiator hose. And it operates this little black solenoid here that basically dumps a bit of extra fuel into the engine when it engages. These things have a habit of going bad, and that is often something that gets bypassed in a lot of these cars. If you just ground out this wire, either via switch or something else, it'll turn on the starter solenoid that gives you your extra fuel. Something you can see from this side pretty clearly is our center line of our axle sits basically underneath the radiator, and all of the weight of this engine sits behind that. That engine is pretty heavy. It's about 700 pounds, maybe about 300 kilos, just rough math here. And it's sitting between the wheels helps a lot with the weight balance of the car. That means the engine and transmission both basically sit between the two axles. And so that helps to make it actually a pretty good handling car. I have radial tires on here, which were starting to come into existence after this car was developed, but they actually suit the car fairly well. And brakes are drum brakes at the front. The front suspension is a twin A-arm suspension with a torsion bar, essentially as a spring, and a tubular shock absorber, like a standard modern shock absorber, handling the damping. The rear is leaf sprung, solid axle in the back. It is a Dana 44 type of differential. It's a Salisbury differential, the same kind of differential that would frequently be used in trucks. So pretty hardy, pretty solid, very, very reliable. The transmissions on these were built by a company called Moss in England. It is the single worst part of Jaguars of this era. And I'm sure in the drive we're going to have a lot to say about it. But it is a glorious engine, it is a gloriously beautiful car, and a lot of mechanical thought went into making it a wonderful car. That said, I think it's time to turn it over to Amy into the interior.
So here we are in the interior. It's not extremely interior because it's, very open. You can totally see what we were talking about with lack of room to put anything, including your feet in some cases. I have lots of space. This is where having short legs is actually an advantage. It's really nice. So this is a fairly minimal interior. However, it's fairly luxurious. I mean, we've got leather, you've got stitching that's really nice. It's simple, but not basic. We have our steering wheel. This is not the original steering wheel. This is a replica of the original steering wheel that is 1 inch smaller in diameter than the original, so that Alex can actually drive this car, because otherwise he doesn't fit underneath. You have turn signals. They are kind of self-canceling. You have a horn. It's loud. It's really easy to bump with your chest when you're trying to get in or out of the car. Just saying. This little pull knob right here runs the wipers. This is your cigarette lighter. Now, an interesting thing about this car, you have a cigarette lighter, but no ashtrays. Usually I'm pointing out there's an ashtray here, there's an ashtray there. There's no ashtrays. So that is a very special feature in this car. You have your tachometer and your clock over here. So this gauge is your oil level gauge. You have to push a switch, so it'll show you. So this is the switch, and it tells me that my oil is full. I just think that's pretty cool. Water and oil temperature and pressure. This is your headlight switch. It's off. S is for side light. H is for headlights. I'm gonna turn those off. Underneath your headlights, this is your fog light switch. You just pull that out. Lights. Turn that off. This is your trafficator light that tells you when your turn signals are on. It blinks. This is your starter button. I will not be pushing that. This is your speedometer. Your speedometer is over here in front of the passenger because you're a race car driver. You don't need to know how fast you're going. You just need to know what your RPMs are. This is your panel lights. You can't see them very well, but that's what that is. Over here, you have your
Grab handle.
Yes, but I was going to say a swear word, and we're not allowed to say swear words. This is your passenger grab handle because there are no seatbelts in this car because it's 1952. Underneath the grab handle, there is a plaque that tells us that this Jaguar car is an exact replica of the record-breaking car which achieved the speed of 132.6 miles per hour at Jabuquet, Belgium, 30th of May, 1949. That does not mean that this is really an exact replica of that car. It just means that it was an XK120. It's a fairly basic, easy to understand dash. And even though the switches aren't labeled, it's pretty easy for me to remember what they do. You have one tiny mirror here in case you need to see straight back. You know, it is a mirror, it does work. We have usual pedals in the usual place. We do have cars in which pedals are not in the standard place, so I feel like it's important to point that out. This little hatch allows you to check your transmission fluids level. And they've carpeted that because everything is carpeted. I would not like to get my transmission fluids on this carpet. So here we are on the driver's side, and we talked earlier about the footwell vents, essentially. So there's a little switch in here. I just push my foot, and now my feet get fresh air. So you may have noticed that something that I did not mention and you did not see in the cockpit is things like a glove box or even a shelf. None of that is in here. However, we do have a door. So, inside the door, this is not a pocket. A lot of cars have like a mat pocket or something that you just pull out and you put little flat things in there. This fills almost the entire inside of this door. We have documents in there. I've put my knitting in there for demonstration purposes. You can actually put a lot in there. So this is the very nifty, in my opinion, door mechanism. You basically reach down, you pull up, it operates the latch, let it down, and it springs back. Also on the inside of this door, we have these knobs. These knobs are used to hold the side screens on. You loosen them up, there's a tab that you stick in there, and then you tighten it down again. There's also a lock knob. We do not know why there is a lock knob, because, so you lock the door, you can't open the door from the outside anyway. If you don't have the top and side curtains on, then you can just reach in and undo the lock knob and open the door. And if you have the side curtains on, there's a flap that you can reach in and open the door. So, decorative? We don't know. So one last interesting thing about this car that we haven't shown you yet is the top.
So as we come around here, the seats flip forward, and then the top comes out, lifts up, unfolds. It's kind of a production and a pain to set up. It hooks back here. It has 3 clips that hook to the windscreen on each of the corners. It does actually have a little glass window in it, but it's a very small window that you can't really see much through. I don't know why they bothered. But then otherwise, the only other thing back here is this metal cover here, and this metal cover hides your originally 2 6-volt batteries for this car. At this point, we just have a single 12 volt in there. And then when you're done, you take the top down, you stow it away, and then that all folds back. And that's pretty much it. So, as opposed to what we usually end up doing and just going out for a drive, we are taking this car to the Oregon coast for the weekend. So, in preparation for that, we're gonna get ready to go.
I'm gonna go change because you guys may not realize this, but in an open top car, the coast can get a little billowy if you're wearing a summer dress. So here we are, driving down the road on our way to the coast in our beautiful Jaguar XK120. This car is kind of an achievement car for me because when it was added to the collection, I found it incredibly intimidating. I was like, that car is too fancy, too beautiful, too big for me to ever be good enough to drive it. It turns out that I can, and it's not that hard. So this is not the first time I've driven this car. We took this out for a test drive to make sure that I could drive it safely, and I can. And sometimes you really need that when it's a car that, even if you're an experienced driver, when it's a car you haven't driven before, and when it's a car of an era that you have not experienced before. Because they all have their little tips and tricks and quirks and personalities. And it's important to get to know the car, especially if you're going to be talking about it on camera. And we are taking a highway out to the coast that is lower traffic.
And more scenic.
And much more
It's
scenic.
a better one, honestly, for this car.
So, in general, this is just lovely. Once you get this out on the freeway, it's fantastic. And this is, again, another perfect car for a day like today. The ride in this is very smooth. The suspension's pretty good. It's a little sporty, but this is one of the things I think that Jaguar prided themselves on was...
Space, grace, and pace.
Space, grace, and pace. Is that their motto?
Yep. Kind of failed on the space, to be honest.
Especially in this one.
This one's a pretty tight car.
Yeah. Grace and pace, though, you've got those covered.
Yep.
One thing I do like about this car is it wants to go fast. A little earlier, I was going a little too fast. And that's pretty easy to do because this is set up as a race car, which means I have the tachometer in front of me, but the speedo's over there. So it's like, you don't need to know how fast you're going, you just need to know when to shift. Well, actually, on public roads, I do need to know how fast I'm going.
The other way of thinking about it is you want to go 2,400 RPM.
Okay.
Because that is about 58 miles an hour.
Sweet.
The other odd thing about the tachometer on here is it spins backwards from what we would think is normal.
Yes, it weirds me out a little bit.
So it turns counterclockwise as opposed to clockwise as you go faster.
Yes. Once you get up to speed, the steering is really great on this car. It just tracks nicely. I don't have to do a lot of correcting. It's a fairly narrow car, so it's pretty easy for me to stay in my lane. Brakes are a little heavy, which is normal. You know, there's no brake assist. So you just brake a little sooner than you think you need to. It will stop. You just gotta stand on the brakes a little bit.
Make sure your leg's in good shape.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to work out a little bit. Don't skip leg day if you're gonna be driving older cars, let me tell ya. The one thing about this car that I don't like is the gearbox. Alex has explained to me that the gearbox is just...
Nope, no swear.
Oh, sorry, no swear. Okay. Alex has informed me that the gearbox is just not a good gearbox. It wasn't from new, so that is not my fault.
Yeah, Jaguar, for some reason, were using what are called the Boss gearboxes at this era, and you find them on a few other British cars and things, but Jaguar's the main ones who seem to be using them. And they're just kind of terrible. They don't shift nicely, they have very slow synchros, they're just not a great gearbox.
The other thing that I don't like is that I kind of have to use my tippy toes on the clutch, which I'm much better at doing. I mean, I don't have to do my tippy toes like I did on the Espada, so I don't need platform shoes, and I really don't need a cushion, which is good because there's not a lot of room in this car.
The clutch is also still fairly heavy.
It is a heavy clutch.
But it's a mechanical linkage in the transmission. There's no hydraulics or anything involved, so you aren't getting much in the way of assistance.
Yeah. I would not want to drive this in town on a regular basis, just because of how heavy the clutch is and how easy it is to shift into reverse when you want to shift into first. So it's understandable why some people modify these cars and just put in a later gearbox or things like that, just for drivability's sake. I mean, we've kept this pretty stock. We have this one, we have a 140,
and a 150.
And a 150. So I'm looking forward to driving those as well and experiencing the differences.
Yeah. If you can hear it, that whistling noise is not a slipping belt. It is one of the carburetors, for some reason, loves whistling whenever it's at just the right throttle opening.
Yeah.
It's something we've tried to fix, haven't really been very successful. I may have to disassemble, rebuild the carburetor, or flat out replace them with new. If you can't hear this, Joel, cut this from the video, don't put it in. If you can hear this, cut what I said about cutting this from the video.
Note editor. But let me tell you, this car is a head turner.
Absolutely.
We get a lot of comments, we get a lot of waves. We took it to get gas this morning, and there was a gentleman there who was like,
Europeans aren't normally my thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, you gotta recognize a piece of art.
But
damn,
we're allowed to say damn.
Yeah.
I will say this car gives one more of a raw driving experience, just because it's it requires more participation, it requires a little more concentration. Not that it's difficult, it just wants you to be involved. I've mentioned this before in episodes, but this has been good for me. This channel has been really good for me. It has built up my driving confidence. I feel like it's made me a much better driver. It's really taught me a lot of the fun of driving. And I'm not nervous. I feel really happy to be behind the wheel of this car and to be one of the people who is a caretaker of these machines. Because, I mean, this will last beyond me.
Yes.
And that makes me really happy.
Climbing a hill here, get the revs up. I love this engine though.
Yes.
The XK motor, premiering really in this and the Mark 7, is such a fantastic engine of the era. Enough so that Jaguar kept using it into the 80s. It's a really impressive motor as far as the way that it performed. And it made some of the fastest production cars in the world of its era, this being one of them. I mean, these cars were the foundations of the C-Type, the foundations of the D-Type. It's this engine, it's this drivetrain, I should say, as an underlying structure, that made those cars work, made those cars possible. These were cars for car enthusiasts. This was not a car you would buy just because, oh, I need a car. You bought this because you wanted this. You wanted this experience. You wanted these cars that you could take out and really enjoy like this. And it is, for 1952, this is one hell of a sports car. These were quick, they responded well, the engine's great, good RPM, good handling. They had a lot of things really going for them for the context of the time. And the quality is there. You had other companies like Allard putting out cars and things that had high performance, typically American engines actually. They don't handle anywhere near as well as this does. They don't drive anywhere near as well as this does. They aren't finished out anywhere near as well as this was. Even the Allards that were intended to be street cars to compete with this, they're not that great of a car. Trust me, I own one. They're interesting, but they're not that great of a car.
And that's the thing about our collection is we enjoy driving everything, but some cars are more enjoyable than others. And some cars were like this, built for the driver. I mean, I'm not uncomfortable as the passenger, but again, I do have to brace myself with things. You may notice that I am not knitting at this time. That is because I need my hands to brace. This car does not have bolsters. It does not have seatbelts. So I am holding myself in place. I have no complaints about this, to be clear. I always do feel like a movie star in this car, though.
I can see that.
Feels very Audrey Hepburn.
I mean, this shows that British designers can design beautiful things.
Yes.
This isn't an Italian-bodied car, but it has a lot of the characteristics that really tended to come in later on and define what made Italian cars beautiful as well. It's very shapely, very nicely formed, very flowing, very, very elegant.
It's a very glamorous car.
Yes. We're about another 10, 12 miles before we're actually at the coast itself. And what a glorious road it is. So that said, I also do enjoy driving this car. The driving position's not great. Honestly, this is a car made for someone shorter than me. A lot of that, I think, has to do with sort of the time frame that they had to design it in. My legs are kind of bow-legged out in order to clear the steering wheel. Steering wheel's kind of in the middle of my chest. You've got a horn button right in the middle of this. Perfect spear. Don't get in an accident or it'll skewer you. You know, I also tend to hit it occasionally, getting in and out, or like if I'm backing up and like put my arm across the steering wheel. It's sort of annoying. They did away with that on the later Jaguars. It looks pretty, but not the best idea in the long run. Driving position is very upright, very compact. I'm really tucked in order to drive this car. There are things that they improved later on in the 140 and the 150, but at the same time, this is really the pure sense of what this car should have been. And these cars were very popular, especially for people who wanted to also race them. But it was also a movie star car. Clark Gable bought the first one. That car's absolutely gorgeous. It still exists, it's been restored. It won Best in Show at Pebble Beach, which honestly, since it's a post-war car, is freaking amazing. It's very, very rare that something as pedestrian as a standard-bodied car would even take a chance at winning first in class. Shows really what a special car these were, and what a special car that one in particular was. The scenery here is particularly beautiful, and this is a particularly fun road to drive. This is a big part of what Oregon's fantastic about. We haven't even left our county yet, and our county literally stretches from the valley that we live in over a mountain range to the coast, and then in the opposite direction you end up in the mountains and snowy peaks and kind of everything you would want, honestly, if you wanted to find a beautiful place to live. And it is one of the best places to own a classic car, I think.
Yes, I think so.
In the state.
You know, we are not sponsored by the tourism board or anything.
Yeah, they should.
They should. But, you know, hey, you know, if you want to sponsor us, hit me up. But this is just a beautiful place to be. Which is why we've brought all of you along on this part.
Yes.
So remember, like and subscribe.
Tell your friends.
Oh, yes. Tell your friends.
Educate them.
Educate your friends.
I mean, it can be fun canyon carving, but to me, this is a more enjoyable thing. I don't want to be exhausted at the end of the drive. And this is exhilarating enough and challenging enough to enjoy it without getting to the end of it going, oh, thank God I'm done.
Yes. And there are some cars that are exhilarating for about 20 minutes, and then you want to be done.
Yes.
This is not like that. This car is very happy being a touring car.
So we are back from probably one of the most beautiful drives we've ever done in this car on an absolutely glorious weekend. So that said, it's time for the Haugland Score. Here's how it works.
Alex and I have individually rated the car in 5 categories, each with a rank of 0 to 10. Then we add our scores together to give us the final Haugland score.
After we combine our scores, the results go up on the board.
So for performance, I gave it a 7.5. It performs very well once you get going. For me, it's like that initial start, the steering is a little heavy, but it accelerates well. The brakes work. You have to stand on them a little bit in order to get them to work. But for the time, it performs very well.
And I gave it a 7. And for me, that is almost entirely due to that engine. It has such a glorious sound, such a glorious smooth power band. It's just a wonderful engine to drive a car in. It's hurt by the transmission. Frankly, the gearbox is a pain to shift. It's a pain to kind of deal with. It's hard to get into the right gear. It's just not a great gearbox. Otherwise, it accelerates well. The power is great. There's no concern about like running out of power or anything. It's just a wonderfully nice car to drive. Moving on to styling, I gave this car a 9. It is gorgeous. It really is probably one of the most beautiful English cars made in the 1950s, when a lot of English cars were just kind of a little bit odd and very English.
I also gave it a 9. It is stunning. The curves are so clean. There's just enough chrome, not too much. So lovely to look at, both from inside and outside.
Absolutely.
So for drivability, I gave it a 4.5. I can drive it, but the clutch is really heavy and I have to push it with my tippy-tip toes. The gearbox is not nice. However, I would not take this to the grocery store. You can only put 2 people in it. There's very little space to store anything. And it has no roof. This is not an all-weather car.
I gave this car a 4 for drivability. This is a great car to go out and cruise the countryside in and then take back home.
Yes.
There's not really good storage. There's not really good cargo capacity. It's not a great car to even go on a long distance trip because you'd have a hard time fitting normal suitcases in it. It's not something I would even contemplate dreaming of driving every day, and certainly not in foul weather.
No.
And on the significance, this is where this car shines. I gave this car a 10. It is the fastest production car in the world. It's the introduction of the XK engine that Jaguar used into the 1990s. That engine was in one of the other fastest production cars in the world that came out a few years later. Hint, hint, we'll cover that one at some point.
And I gave it an 8.5, but you've convinced me I'm going to kick it up to a 9. Partially because this car made Jaguar, not just mechanically, but also physically. They established something bigger, brighter, more classy looking, something that Hollywood stars wanted to drive down the boulevards of California.
At the same time, this was the foundation of the Jaguar C-Type, with which they started dominating Le Mans. And this is a small startup company taking on the likes of Mercedes that had been really well funded and had really a long history of successful racing.
It's British pluckiness.
Absolutely.
So for delight, I gave it a 9. Literally everywhere we went, people turned their heads. When we stopped to take photos and switch cameras and do things like that, people pulled over to say, oh my gosh, that's beautiful, can I take a picture?
I gave this car a 9.5. I think a lot of it kind of gets summed up by when we first test drove this car, you may remember. We come to a stop sign and there are pedestrians walking across the street. They stop, they turned, they looked at the car, and they cheered.
I had forgotten about that, but I remember it now that you mention it.
And it's like, okay, we have to buy this car.
Yes, it made me feel like a movie star.
Even if they don't necessarily know what it is, it's a car that inspires awe and wonder.
All right, we've done the math, and that gives us a grand total of 78.5 points for our 1952 Jaguar XK120. That puts it in 5th place, half a point behind our Alfa Romeo Montreal, and half a point ahead of my Lotus Evora S.
So, that basically puts this red car between two red cars.
We have a lot of red cars, you might have noticed.
That said, they're not all red. And some of the ones that you think should be red aren't, which is what makes them great.
Yes, this car is amazing in so many ways and far above and beyond many other cars. It's just the drivability that lets it down.
For me, it's a significant car because Jaguar is where this collection started. Really, those were the first cars I was collecting, the first cars I was buying. And this is one that I've always lusted after, and when it came up for sale, I had to have it. Much to the annoyance of another friend of mine, who at the time had seen it in the dealer and had planned on going home, talking to his wife, and then coming and buying it, only to find out I beat him to it.
Should have brought his wife.
Yep, I did. I'm so glad we finally, after all this time, have featured a Jaguar on this channel. It is certainly not the last.
No.
The problem is I've got too many to do, and the question is, what do we do next? Do we do a sedan? Do we go 50s? Do we go 80s? Do we go 30s? British, Italian, French, Swedish, there's even an Israeli one. That'll take a little bit to get ready, but at some point we will definitely do that one too. If you have a clue what the hell I'm talking about, more power to you. If you have a guess, put it in the comments.
Thanks again for watching. We really appreciate your support.
Keep an eye out, subscribe, make sure you have the notification turned on. That way you know when we do come out with it. And with that, until next time, bye.